I mix what I like, what I like.
I mix what I like is exactly where you want and need to be. I mix what I like, organic, vegan, soul food from your immediate diet. Get healthy.
I mix what I like, what I
We're
like.
here on I Mix What I Like. You may check us out on imixwhatilike.org, where you can see all these other shows and what my daddy likes and other cool things.
Yeah, what's up, world? Welcome to another edition of I Mix What I Like, right here at I Mix What I Like. Again, I'm Jared Ball, happy to be your host. And yes, indeed, I am up way past my bedtime, but for good reason. Yeah, this is 3 a.m. for me, for sure. For those who are able to make it live, please do invite others to join you. Be here for at least a few minutes. Not gonna be up here too long because this has been noted. It's already past my bedtime, but for very good reason. This is man. So please like, share, subscribe, do all the things, support the platform. That appreciate you. Yeah, let's get into it. Off the top, you got to go see it. We got to find ways to get people to see this documentary. It's one of the best I've ever seen. Even before we get to any of the politics, the quality of the film, the directing, the editing, the selection of clips, the manipulation of shots and footage, the weaving, going back and forth to tell a lot in a very succinct, though it is 2.5 hours, but it doesn't feel like it. It doesn't feel like it. And so I know the last time I was this excited, I got wrapped up in my own personal story and was mistaken with American fiction. So Mtume, I can't, if you out there, if you see this, I can't imagine even you could inform me in such a way that I would have to reconsider. Yeah, Elon is not playing. Yeah, you go to film festivals. Yeah, okay. I mean, I cannot wait. I cannot wait for this thing to be more prominently available. And don't let me find a way to purchase even a digital copy. I'll pay for this. But we have to get as many people to see this as possible. So when I saw this at the AFI Theater in Silver Spring, Maryland, just a few minutes ago, a good crowd, but it was overwhelmingly old and white. Not that many Africans were in the room. And this is a film for the African world. This is a film for anyone interested not in just US history, but the politics of struggle. European world history. This is far beyond the United States. But I can't initially, I just can't even get over how good it is. And I even stayed after to make sure I saw the name of the editor. Rick Chaubet, Chaubet. Forgive me for mispronouncing. The editing was crazy. But okay, so, and I'll go through a little bit of what I took a few notes, but it was very difficult because I don't want to have my phone on in the theater, and then it was even more difficult because I kept getting wrapped up. So I would be thinking, oh, I want to write this down. I want to make a note. I want to remember this. I want to bring this point back. But it's rapid fire. There's so much happening from from the very beginning, and so much that you have to read in subtitles because there's a lot of different languages going on. And then so many names I just didn't get. There's a lot of, and there's just so much I have not read or learned about some of the details of the histories involved here that I would like to catch up to, and that would that all deserve so many more deep dives. Uh so one thing I wanted to do here is just pull up the IMDb from the documentary. Soundtrack to a coup d'etat. Um, Director Johan Grimon Prez. Forgive me for incredibly good job. Dan Milius is a co-writer. I mean, it's phenomenally well done. And then just some of the figures that they cover here: Fidel Castro, Malcolm X, Dwight D. Eisenhower, Louis Armstrong, Patrice Lumumba, obviously, and Andre Bluine. I have got to learn more about this sister. And I've read the name in passing, just in reading a little bit about Lumumba, but I admit that I never really followed up, and I didn't know a couple of things about her. One, that she was his speechwriter, and then two, as she was referred to, I think by either one of the CIA agents or Belgian authorities. I can't even remember. I couldn't even catch that she is was called a half French mulatto communist, and was therefore targeted and forced to flee to Congo. A point I might want to come back to in the future. But I definitely would like to learn more about no, I know, but there was a couple notes I had to get. Phone on in the theater, I get it. But for the most part I didn't, because one, I don't want to be that guy. Although I did get there early and I was positioned in the most back row in the middle. So it wasn't, my phone wouldn't have been a disturbance to anybody in the theater, at least that part. But in general, I agree with you. I did have to jot down a couple of things. Yeah. So one, there's going to be more. There's going to be follow up to this. This is just a first reaction. I got to read some more. There's got to be more discussions of this. I might even have to find a way to get to the theater again to see it again. I don't know. And maybe we can find others who have seen it and written about it and talk about. Anyway, there's much more that has to be done. So, but I did want to get at least these first thoughts out here. So, one of the first things I said was, I hope no one accepts to go on tour to West Africa now, given all of the potentially beautiful movements happening on the continent. This documentary is instructive in some ways, and I hope artists will see this documentary, and I would like to think artists of whoever background, whatever genre, would reconsider accepting State Department tours. I hope that part ends. I have, years ago, I had a couple uncomfortable conversations with some folks in the DC hip hop community around this. It's on. I just hope that they would see this and reconsider what that means. Because after you see this documentary, if you whatever you think you knew or what you didn't know, so that's one thing. Speaking of which, I wasn't actually sure to what extent. And by the way, some spoilers, but there's some stuff I'm not. First of all, some stuff I won't remember. Some stuff I'm not gonna. I probably won't spoil, but maybe, I don't know. But potential spoiler alert. So feel free to dip out if you know. But in terms of the artist thing, one thing that I thought was or I wasn't sure at some points in the documentary, and I'll check the chat in a little bit. Maybe Elon will have some thoughts on this, but I wasn't sure, was the documentary disparaging some of the artists and trying to praise some others? Like, I thought the film wanted to praise, in particular, Max Roach and Abby Lincoln, and seeing who was getting the footage. They got not just some deep cut footage, but very well restored, so in the sound, I mean, they really, Miriam Makeba, Nina Simone, but so I wasn't really sure. At some points, it seemed like they were trying to make it appear as though while these heavy political activities are taking place, these artists are over here performing. And on another point, and there's this powerful moment where they're showing you John Coltrane, and they talk about him going to see Malcolm X speak and being moved. And then you see him and he's playing, and you can just see he's just working so hard and just giving everything to the instrument. And then there are two moments in the documentary, this is one of them, where they cut the sound and you just see the facial expressions and the effort in trying to play while you hear the sounds of these other activities politically happening, the machinery of colonization happening, and you see his face. Like, so in that moment, I felt like, okay, no, they're telling us Coltrane is clear, and he's trying to call out rebellion or the pain of the failed revolution. I'm not, but then there are other moments with other artists where I'm not really sure. So that was just something I wasn't. But one thing, so based on some of the conversations we were having this morning on the Remix Morning Show, I got a couple of texts from Claudia De La Cruz, shout out to her, who put me on to something that actually is and I got to read it as I was waiting for the film for the theater to open up. So I'll put this link in the chat. It's a letter from Dwight Eisenhower, former president of the United States, circa, I think, 1953. Yeah, May 1st, 1953. And it's essentially him writing a letter talking about what he thinks needs to happen to make sure the United States becomes, stays in power in the world. And a lot of it centers on the story, the narrative of the United States. Another need is in the job of presenting the American story throughout the world to friends and enemies alike. It is hopeless to do this by lecturing and pontification. It must be done in many ways, and in most of it, the hand of the government must be carefully concealed, and in some cases, I should say, wholly eliminated. A great deal of this particular type of thing would be done through arrangements with all sorts of privately operated enterprises in the field of entertainment, dramatics, music, and so on and so on. Another part of it would be done through the clandestine arrangements and with magazines, newspapers, and other periodicals and book publishers in some countries. This entire part must be carefully segregated, in my opinion, from the official statement of American position before the world. And I thought that was perfectly timed, because as much as Eisenhower figures in this documentary, this was him saying very clearly, everything must be used to manipulate the world into accepting the U.S. being in charge. So, and given what he just said about entertainment and music, this is why I keep saying there is no such thing as entertainment. There is no such thing as it's just a movie. It's just music. All of it, and they make this very clear in the documentary. from the perspective of revolutionary artists and the state, that art is a weapon. That word is used repeatedly. The New York Times is quoted in 1955 in the documentary a number of times as making this point from the perspective of the state. These artists are being sent around the world to perform, and they even made fun of it with Dizzy Gillespie talking about the something like our something about our weapon being blues and our weapon being music and our weapon this and weapon that. So they're very clear. And Eisenhower, in addition to that, his clarity was referenced at one point in the documentary, saying he was quoted as saying he hoped Lumumba would be thrown or fall into a lake of crocodiles, something to that effect. I could only write down the word crocodiles real quick. So he, on the one hand, and this sort of sets the tone for the whole documentary, Eisenhower is very clear: art is for soft power, colonization, imperialism. Despite what he says and what we see him say at the UN. And then on the other hand, he's saying Lumumba's got to go. And they have on-camera interviews with CIA agents and a whole bunch of other figures, audio tapes of where people are saying Eisenhower told me to set in motion the assassination of Lumumba. And I'm telling you, I was right. I'm going to keep harping on it about that first Black Panther film, where you see the film end with T'Challa coming in there with the sash and giving that speech to the UN and making the CIA agent smile. This documentary goes into more detail of the reality of what that scene is looking to erase in terms of world history. The people who did Black Panther are knowledgeably diabolical. And when you see this documentary, even if you know the history certainly better than I do, it's not likely that we would have seen in one place such a well-edited representation of that history. And the documentary is painfully clear that Lumumba was on the side of Killmonger. Congo's resources will be exploited by our people, he said. We're linking up with Nkrumah. We want a United States of Africa and sign some treaty or whatever to set that in motion. Where was Sekou Touré? Malcolm X is shown over here to be holding up that same argument that there needs to be Pan-African solidarity, a United States of Africa, and this is clearly the goal that those in power were terrified of. You see on camera the Belgian ambassador and the Belgian this guy and the Belgian that guy and King Baudouin and all of these people. You see them saying Lumumba's a problem. His speech disappointed us. So that speech at the end of Black Panther is the complete antithesis to what happened in real history, where you see Lumumba again saying, hey, we want to be, he even says, at one point, we intend to have friendly relations with with Belgians, but not on the same basis, not on that same. And yeah, okay. It starts off, shout out to the late great Max Roach, because the film starts on him playing drums, which is great. There's a part in here where you see exactly why, again, people like me can't stand museums. They in outlining one of the I wrote down museums because they have a part where they're showing you the Belgian Congo museum in Belgium. And you see that it's their colonial trophies. And that's why museums are not meant to honor and tribute. They are trophies of the conquered. Hip Hop Museum, African American Museum, they're the trophies of the conquered. I don't care that Indigenous Peoples Museum, trophies for the colonizer. And there's a part in this documentary that I would have liked to take more notes on to have more to say on it, and eventually I will. But that really shows. And I was sitting there, I had to scramble to write down museums. They talk about the algorithm of colonialism, and once the algorithm was set, it was a fait accompli, pun intended, given the French and that's involved. That all of this uprising would have to be suppressed. And to demonstrate, I couldn't catch the name. I gotta learn. There's so much I just don't know. But to emphasize the point about culture as a weapon, there's a Congolese poet who, I think it was in the 1950s, maybe a little earlier, who wrote a poem that basically said, eventually the white man's got to get out of here, and we're going to end colonialism. And they locked him up for life. So again, this idea that again, it's just entertainment. It's just no. There's a clarity among those who colonize and who are in charge of all this, that the form of cultural expression, particularly of the colonized, must be managed, which is exactly why we have what we have today. And any tendency towards the other direction has to be taken care of. And in those extreme situations, when the colonialism is more overt, lock them up for life. The film does a great job of highlighting the role of women. I mentioned Blouin. I'm not saying her name correctly. Forgive me. Uh, who was the speechwriter, principal speechwriter for Lumumba, but and I didn't get her name either. Man, things were just moving so fast. The sister who was it? Oh man, who was it for? Now I can't even remember who they were arranging for. I want to say Duke Ellington, but I don't think it was him. It may have been him, but they showed, and what it seemed like they were trying to show is that sublimated maybe behind or beneath these more popular men were these women who were doing the writing of the speeches and the arranging of the music. Oh man, somebody in the chat might know this, but I couldn't get I couldn't get the name. Everything was just going too fast. There's a clip of Malcolm I mentioned. He figures nicely in this, and it was good to see Malcolm in this context again. That where you see Malcolm speaking about, because there was this moment, and I got to get clear on the history of the Security Council at the UN, because they were talking about after in the coming decolonization, all these African nations and Asian nations post Bandung, and we see Nehru, and we see my man from China, Chow. Oh my God, and I can't remember now. I'm messing up his name. And Chow and what was the president? Now I should know this. This is anyway. Someone in chat will correct. I'll check in a second. We see him. We see Nehru. We see Sukarno. We see all of them. Nasser. We see, of course, in Nkrumah, we see all of these. And when the African and Asians formed a bloc, and you see news reports in the West and the United States talking about if the Africans and Asians vote as a bloc, they'll have 46 of the 99 or whatever. They'll have more 46 of the 90 votes, meaning they would have a majority and they could override. And then you see this part where Malcolm is talking about this, saying that these former colonies coming to power will soon have the ability to outvote even the most powerful nations at the UN, and this is something big for Black people in the United States. And he said, in fact, I wrote this part down: the ballot is as powerful as the bullet. And I want to pick up on that particular phraseology because, again, this is how I think we need to reorganize our approach to electoral politics. But that's what Malcolm was talking about. That's what Malcolm was talking about. So I'm sure the Security Council was reformatted as a response to all that. But that's another of the many gaps in my own memory or knowledge about this. And but that was key. And this is another reminder that this reverse hashtag stuff is tantamount. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not claiming or accusing, but it's tantamount to the COINTELPRO anti liberation efforts of the state. It's so clear. This documentary does such a beautiful job of showing with clips and references to people's autobiographies and memoirs and rare interviews and archive this and that. It's so clear how Pan-Africanism terrifies those who rule. And they have clips of people saying they're not worried about socialism or communism, they're worried about Africanism. And at least to a large extent, not to downplay the anti-communism, but that was it. And the label of communist obviously was used to ramp up the West's self-fulfilling logic as to why they could destroy these. But that's why anybody today who is saying Black people and whoever that anyone working against Pan-Africanism is literally carrying out in the 21st century what the colonial imperial world desires at its most core. It's just so obvious. And this documentary is anyone looking to wed Black America's fate solely within the United States, anyone working within the African diaspora to highlight disunity or encourage disunity is a political intellectual descendant of the Dulles brothers who you see in here. And there's a beautiful discussion from I think it's a French artist talking about. He's saying something about oh man, I got to see this again. The inauthenticity of painting, because when you're painting a pipe, it's not a pipe. And as they're talking about this, going back and forth, they keep showing Alan Dulles lighting his pipe, and then in clips lying about everything. We're not imperialists. We're not overthrowing governments. This documentary is off the chain. It is so damn good. Even if you don't agree with the politics, just aesthetically, it's and then politically, it's just incredibly well done. I misunderstood Dag Hammarskjöld too, by the way, the former head of the UN, the Swedish dude. And having seen that other documentary a couple of years about him, I'd like to see them juxtaposed. And in this one, they don't tell you what happens to him. For some reason, they leave that out. I was shocked by that. Because he's shown in this documentary to be working underhandedly against Lumumba at every turn. And then I thought for sure the film would want to connect his assassination to what was or was not happening with the and they didn't do it. They didn't even say anything about it, which I thought was an odd thing to leave out. So I guess that's one slight imperfection. They talk about Nina Simone being unaware that she was being sent to Nigeria, I believe, to as part of a CIA sponsored mission. Because one of the things they do show you is the CIA. There's so many incestuous connections, and some of the times they would just set up a PR firm and produce propaganda out of a private, doing just what Eisenhower, that letter I just showed you to begin, what he was saying to do, disguise our efforts through through private business. And then some CIA agent is also, a top investor in the mines in the Katanga region of the Congo that was providing all the uranium for all the nuclear warfare of the United States. It was bananas. And then just like today, it was the narrative of the Russians and the Chinese we got to beat them in Africa. Just like today, a couple other things. You see on camera, I believe the Belgian prime minister or one of the heads of the Belgian intelligence, Belgian, saying they show a picture of Lumumba, the cabinet Lumumba initially puts together once he's elected, and the dude says on camera, yeah, 3 of them were ours. So he said, I loved it. And then they said that they had some sort of in text saying that the revolution, Lumumba's revolution, was rotten at the core from the beginning, something to that effect. Yeah, there was just a lot of clarity around the United States of Africa that this was the goal. That Nkrumah, Lumumba, Sekou Touré again, and others were just very clear that this was. Um, I couldn't see where it comes from, but there was a translated, I believe, Congolese saying that I thought was fascinating. So I did write it down. It said, because it was making the point that a lot was going on that people couldn't make known to the world. And it said, if a fish cries in the water, does anyone notice? And I said, my note is that this is perfect for that connection to the quote from McLuhan that I'm always thinking about. That McLuhan is saying, uh, uh, we don't know who discovered water, but we know it was not the fish, because an all-pervasive environment is always beyond perception. And then here you have this Congolese, I believe Congolese, saying, if a fish cries in the water, does anyone notice? And to me, it's that this is exactly where we are today. A suppressed media environment that is so a suppressive media environment that is so pervasive that it crushes quietly the mediated cries from the fish, from we the fish. Can't even be heard. Even with all this technology and YouTube and all this stuff, these messages can still just be negated and dissipated very easily. I wrote down Sidney Gottlieb. This dude's name is everywhere. From Wormwood to here. This CIA, NSA operative dude is everywhere. He was in another documentary. He was in the John Potash documentary. He's all over the place. This dude. So I just made a note of that. I don't even, but this name pops up everywhere. Sidney Gottlieb. He was involved with the throwing what's his name out the window in 50, what was that, 53, 55 somewhere, the NSA dude, to throw him out the window to cover up the fact that they were using drugs as chemical biological warfare weapons and psychological warfare. And he was involved with all of this. Voice of America figures prominently as the overt propaganda arm, still in existence. uh, but you could see where and they created a jazz hour, and it was kind of funny because at one point you see Khrushchev was kind of a funny dude. He to me was cracking me up in this, but at one point they were trying to use jazz to propagandize the Soviet Union, and Khrushchev was like, I don't even like this music. He was like, it didn't seem to work. He was like, I'm turning off the radio as soon as I hear it. But I'll forgive him for his problems with jazz because his statements at the UN were all in support of Lumumba and decolonization and signing that pact that the U.S. and Belgium abstained from the vote in the UN to decolonize. Meeting with Fidel Castro in Harlem and all that kind of stuff. Like I was like, and banging on the desks when they didn't like something, they'd be banging on the there's a part in here where you see Malcolm X talking about white hostages in Belgium, and I was like, he said he laid down the narrative that happens right here today. It's happening right now in Israel, in Palestine. That something to the effect, all I wrote down was white hostages, but it was something to the effect that they once white folks get abducted, all of a sudden everybody's concerned, but that's not really what the issue is. Something I'm not doing it justice, but I was thinking, wow, it's the same narrative as that we hear today. I wrote down soda versus CIA again, because again, it's just so clear in this documentary that if you're part of the reverse hashtag community, you're politically, even if you think you're working for the sovereignty and the health of the Black nation here in the United States, the politics, even unwittingly, if you even to give you the benefit of the doubt, it's white supremacists, it's colonialism, it's imperialism. I'm not doing justice because I couldn't remember everything and I couldn't take a lot of notes, but this documentary does an amazing job of again clarifying how much the United States and its European allies cannot stand African unity. They fear it. They need it to be for Africans to be disunified. And they put in so much work. So as I start to wrap up my comments here, this is what was really, and there's a couple points in here I'm not even going to bring up because you got to experience it. It's so powerful. And there's something akin to the documentary. I remember Amandla, where you hear this sister singing some of the because that's another you hear from the guerrilla fighters for part of Lumumba's resistance, and one of them is this sister who is just singing one of the songs that they sang, and it's incredibly moving. And at the same time, but I did exactly, admittedly, what I start to get emotional, and then I get angry because I admit I don't want to cry. So I let it turn into anger because I start thinking about starting admittedly humbly. Like again, it's a reminder of how little I feel like I'm even able to do. But also feeling like I can't, I don't even know how I would prove it or how any of us would prove it to be as committed as some of these people were. Cause in this time and place, I don't know how we would even demonstrate that with any substance. I don't know. But that so many people did so much and gave everything to get rid of colonialism, to get rid of capitalism, to get rid of white dominance, and to see these histories. Not only it's one thing for these movements to in the moment lose, but these histories is being wiped away. They're being retold by people who don't give a damn about it, if at all. They really are making it so that we are fish crying in this media environment and being unheard. and movements being rebranded and relabeled. It's so this documentary is so moving, inspiring, also sad and infuriating. Damn. And then I was mad again. I'll stop here and check the chat for any comments, questions, or whatever. But criticisms, conundrums, catechisms, cacophony. In fact, one of the Soviets said that he I think it was Khrushchev said that I think jazz is a cacophony. All I heard was a cacophony of sound coming out of the radio. I had to turn it off. Um, but I forgot exactly where I was going. I just we do need to see it. We got to be inspired by it. We got to be made sad by it. We might have to shed a tear or two about it, but we might have to get mad, get angry. I admit that's my preferred because yo, oh my goodness. Um Anyway, yeah, crying is fine. Educating people about history is priceless. Now to face what comes even in greater force now. Many people are ignorant, need to know. Yeah, crying is fine. I don't mean to, I'm not, I just, it's just my own retrograde, backwards manhood thing. But I felt it. I was like, oh, I might tear up here. So I just got to turn this into anger and start thinking about, what my preferred response would be. Um, And salute, rest in power to Patrice Lumumba just again. I mean, and the two other brothers that they took with him. Um, yeah, no crying in baseball though. And like my wife says, no crying at work either. Can't cry on the job either. Um, so yeah, I mean, the short of it is, please see this documentary if at all possible. I think we got to find ways. I don't know. I don't know. All the stuff we always say with these kind of documents, need to have community viewings. Oh wow, this is a book. This is a book about Sidney Gottlieb. Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. That dude, he must have had an amazing career because his name comes up everywhere in that time period. He was involved with a lot of stuff. Yeah, I get yeah, they said I mean, I know yeah, I mean, it's weird that they say that and this is why I would have loved the film to answer this because that's what I thought, that he was assassinated for being too soft, but in this documentary, he's not overt with it, but he's clearly telling Eisenhower and them, "I'm with you," and Lumumba's a problem. He's got to go. They quote him in there saying some things very close to that. Like he was, so I mean, is dag. I mean, dag. Like, um, no, there was no Kwame Ture in the archival footage in this. That was a bit of an oddity too. Now that you mention it, there's no Kwame Ture. Um, from the United States, there's really outside of the jazz artists that they talk about. There's Malcolm X is really the only one. Um, there was a moment. Who? And I forgot who it was. Too damn. Some administrative or some people. Maybe it was people in the Harlem community had equated Patrice Lumumba to Marcus Garvey. That was another thing. But in terms of reference to this side of there wasn't that much at all. Um, yeah, yeah. Um, so Let's see. Yeah, it is invigorating. I would definitely like to see it, see the film again. So, all right, if there are no real questions or comments or criticisms or anything, we can wrap it up there. I appreciate you all coming through. Didn't have to be here all night long. Be back tomorrow over there on Black Liberation Media for the remix morning show. But man, salute to the filmmakers on this one for sure. And I can't wait to see it again. And Enrique Chaubey, the editor, psh, yeah. All right. Yep. Nope. I got everything. Let's see. Oh, what was this link? Oh no, that was it. That was it. Yeah, I did read the New York Times review. Which was, what was it going to say? I'll share this one part of it that I definitely want to read more about what people are saying about this. Soundtrack largely centers on events of 1960, depending almost entirely upon archival footage, as well as the memoirs and writings of leaders and operatives from the time. Text, beautifully designed text, in fact, the work of designer Hans Lettany, provides historical context and voices from the moment, underscored by on-screen citations right down to the page number. But Grimon Perez, the director, swirls the timeline a bit, jumping backward and forward just enough that links between events. Louis Armstrong's visit to Congo just as Lumumba is under house arrest and CIA agents arrive in the country, for instance, start to emerge. Yeah, it's very well done. And it's true. Hans Lettany deserves, the text, everything looks great. Everything looks great on screen. The film, though, treads less optimistic territory. One of its major threads is the CIA's use of unwitting black musicians to not just spread soft power abroad during the Cold War, but also potentially provide a smokescreen for the agency's more covert dealings. Archival footage and audio interviews with agents, in some cases many years later, underline the point. Art was art, but it was also a useful tool for machinations the artist quite publicly opposed. I don't even agree with that part. When I watch the documentary, I don't take from it that anybody was saying art was art. The artists weren't saying it. They were clear. At one point, they talk about Louis Armstrong is staying in the house of Moist Chombe, and I was thinking of Moist again when we talk about Boyce Watkins. My bad, that was terrible. But Moist Chombe, and Armstrong knows he's on the house of the wrong side. Because he's like, I think Lumumba's the right guy. And I tried to tell Deshombe not to take everything in the country from, leave some for the people. But, in other words, I think that the artists, because even Armstrong is shown singing songs, he's singing, what did I do to deserve to be so black and blue? Puns intended, obviously. But so there's an awareness that their music is supposed to be doing something, that their music is more than just art. And those in power definitely get understood. They're very clear on that. This art is not art. This is all machinations. Yeah. Oh no, Maya Angelou is mentioned a few times in here. Actually, yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. But but I guess she would count as an artist. I was just trying to think of political leader. That's why soundtrack lands on a coda. Each of these historical threads in some way led to the February 15th, 1961 demonstration at the United Nations protesting Lumumba's assassination, organized by a group called the Cultural Association of Women of African Heritage and led by Abby Lincoln, Rosa Guy, and Maya Angelou. But the story didn't end there. And the way they depict that at the end of the documentary is very, very well done. Very powerful. And also, it kind of made me think, like, when we see people interrupting stuff here nowadays, more recently, over more recent years, like there's a history of that is even more interruptive, because they got in there from the Cuban delegate. The Cubans gave those black women 60 seats so they could occupy the UN and interrupt. But yeah, New York crimes, boo. But it was one of the reviews that came up. And so yeah. But yeah. Salute to all these people that made these efforts. But that's like Kendrick talking to Biden, awareness to a certain degree, but no power to influence leaders directly. Yeah. And to be fair, again, when there's no movement akin to what Armstrong and others would have seen to balance what Kendrick and others are doing. But I do think any artist, I think artists who want to have a certain kind of career should avoid this film, so they can maybe sleep better at night or feel less of a contradiction. You can't see this film and not reconsider, maybe any of us, when we're invited somewhere, but especially those kind of gigs. You have to know, and especially now, please, nobody except State Department gigs targeting, trips to West Africa, please, because you will definitely be being used to suppress what's going on over there. Man. Anyway, all right, good people. Thank you very much to those who showed up live, and to those who will see this later. Peace to you as well. And again, as usual, only if you're willing to fight for it, as Fred Hampton used to say. Thank you all very much. Big salute to the filmmakers, and even a bigger salute to those about whom this film was made. And we'll catch you next time here at
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
What do you sacrifice? Calm, kindness, kinship, love. I've given up all chance at inner peace. I made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago, for which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight, that set me on a path from which there's no escape. I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, and by the time I look down, there's no longer any ground beneath my feet. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy and defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Everything, 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 everything.